Hi, this is the next class we'll be doing is looking at the Nexus of Contracts. Now, I guess one problem is that many students don't understand what the term nexus means. When you think of nexus, think spider web. It's a large conglomeration of a bunch of spider web contracts. So if you think of a firm, the idea here, and this is by Easterbrook, who really advanced much of this, was that you can't hit a firm. If I'm really mad at IBM or Dell Computer or Microsoft, how do I hit IBM or Microsoft? You can't. What makes up a firm? A firm is made up of a bunch of different stakeholders. And a stakeholder, try to be a little neater for you, a stakeholder is someone who has a stake at the firm, in the firm. I go a step further than most people. I say anyone who has a stake in the firm. Other books, textbooks, other finance professors, sometimes they make a distinction. They have stakeholders and shareholders. I'm just going to say stakeholders, and it includes shareholders. Shareholders are one stakeholder. So when we start to list different stakeholders at a firm, I'm going to do it, instead of going up and down on a sheet of paper, I'm going to draw it around, and it'll make sense in a second. So let's say, think of anyone who has any stake at a firm. So we have managers. Managers clearly have a vested interest at the firm. We have shareholders. We have bondholders. In fact, creditors in general. I typically use the term bondholders to catch all credit holders. And I will abbreviate these BH and SH as the year goes on. We have employees. We have customers. We have suppliers. We have the local community. We could go on and on. This list is literally inexhaustible. We could put more people down, but this just gets us a flavor of it. The Nexus of Contracts idea essentially says that there are contracts between and among all of these different stakeholders. Some of these contracts are explicit. They say, I will pay you X number of dollars per hour if you work. On the other hand, some of them are implicit. They're not really stated. For instance, if you buy a thing of milk or a thing of water, it doesn't necessarily say this water is safe for consumption. It's assumed. It's an implicit contract. It's not written, but it's assumed. Managers, shareholders, bondholders, employees, all of these various stakeholders have differing incentives. We are going to argue about things nonstop. I have become convinced, the more finance I have experienced, the more classes I took as a student, etc., the more I read now, as you go on in finance, you start out, you do a lot of the science of finance, you do the math, you do the time value of money, etc. But as you move on, this becomes the most important thing we do in finance. What we are doing is looking at how incentives matter, looking at how this contract, how we draw up this contract is going to influence managerial behavior. How this contract is going to influence shareholder and bondholder performance. When we look at contracts, we have to realize that changing a contract is going to change this whole nexus. And people will respond accordingly. If I pay a manager for growing the firm, for sales, for example, if I pay on a commission basis, sales will increase. Now, it may cause other problems. If I pay with stock options, they may cheat, lie, and steal, and everything else, but it will reward behavior, and people do follow their rewards. So the Nexus of Contract idea is probably the most used model we'll use this entire semester. I use this so often, people on Facebook make fun of me about it. It is really one of the biggest things you can take out of the class. The idea that we have many different stakeholders, all of them have differing incentives. Now I'll give you a little peek ahead in an upcoming one. I'm going to ask, and one of the most important things in this is, of these stakeholders who are going to be fighting, how do we decide who's the most important? And we will lay out in an upcoming presentation, we'll talk about employees being the most and customers being the most important, etc. in the end, we are going to see that shareholders are the most important. Not because they're the nicest, not because they take the biggest risks, but because they are residual claimants. Residual claimants, meaning they get paid in the event of a bankruptcy or of a liquidation, they get paid last. Now, we will talk a lot more about this in upcoming classes. The key thing here to take away, Nexus of Contracts says that a firm is made up of contracts between many different stakeholders. Shareholders are going to be the most important group.